Hi guys, this is our not Poolside Chat number 4. We are still in Mind Gym by Gary Mack, and today we are talking about the head edge is first. So the author talks about how he met Pele, which is one of the best soccer players ever to live, and Pele told him that mental edge and enthusiasm are the keys to winning. So Pele described his routine that he does before games, and he does the same thing before every single game. An hour before he would go into the locker room, he would take 2 towels and go into a corner. He would lay down, 1 towel behind his head, 1 towel over his eyes, and he would let his mental camera roll. So in his mind's eye, he saw himself as a youngster playing soccer on the beaches of Brazil. He could feel the gentle breeze, he could smell the salt air, he remembered how much fun he had and how much he loved the game. Pele then hit fast forward button on his mental video. He began recalling his greatest moments in the World Cup and reliving that winning feeling. Then he let those images fade and began rehearsing for the upcoming game. He pictured his opponents. He saw himself dribbling through defenders, heading shots, and scoring goals. After a half hour in solitude alone with his thoughts and the slideshow of positive images, Pele did his stretching exercises. When he trotted into the stadium, washed in cheers, he knew he was physically and mentally prepared. So it's when Natalie and I talked about what talks we were going to do, she brought up that she thought I should talk about my routine. So a lot of you have heard of this, but when I swam, I didn't know any of this, but I naturally created a routine when I swam. So I listened to the same CD. Yes, we listened to CDs then. The same CD behind the blocks. I would go back the same amount of time before every event, and I would sit behind the blocks. We didn't have warm-up and warm-down pools then for a lot of meets. And I would put my head down, and I would visualize the swim over and over and over again for, say, I would go back pretty early, like 10 minutes before I swam, from taking my mark to touching and it being the time I wanted it to be. Then I would get up and do the same stretching routine before I actually went behind the blocks. And then behind the blocks, I had a certain thing that I would do before I got on the blocks. So I set it up before every event the exact same way. And I would have friends try to come talk to me, and I would pick my head up and either be mean or tell them to go away quietly. But I wasn't behind the blocks to be friends with you. I was getting ready to swim. I was behind the blocks to prepare for what I was about to do. Also, I was very, very regimented in what I did outside of the pool. So I went to bed at the same time. My mom used to joke that she would be in the middle of doing things and I would turn the lights out because I had to go to bed right then. And I would eat the same things for breakfast. And my snacks at the meet always had to be the same. I always brought half a cantaloupe, strawberry kiwi Gatorade with the twist top, and a chocolate power bar. And so I would eat half a cantaloupe 30 minutes before I swam. I would eat just the outer edge of the power bar throughout the meet, and then I would just take little drinks of the Gatorade throughout the meet. So I always had to have the same thing. So whenever we would go to the meets, we would go to grocery stores to find cantaloupes and this Gatorade and Powerade. So yes, it all sounds a little bit crazy, but now reading all this stuff, this is how you set your brain up to know what it's supposed to do. So the homework for this week is you're supposed to be creating a mind gym. And the idea is that you're going to create a space in your head that you go to when you're getting ready to prepare for something. So to get the head edge, try creating your own mind gym. You can always do mental practice, even when you are physically tired or injured or quarantined. Make your images as vivid and clear as you can. See yourself overcoming mistakes and imagine yourself doing things well. Remember, confidence comes from knowing you're mentally and physically prepared. Sports psychology is the science of success. Studies show that within a group of athletes of equal ability, those who receive mental training outperform those who don't almost every time. Mental skills, like physical skills, need constant practice. So the homework from this is create a mind gym. So just like I described how Pele had something he did. He used 2 towels. He picked where he was going to start his mental process, and then he went through it, and then he had stretches he did. Create something like that for yourself, something that you would do before every event where you would take yourself through a certain scenario, swim, thought process, stretches. All right, the next is the pressure principle. Under pressure, you can perform 15% better or worse. Scott Hamilton. So Scott Hamilton was a figure skater in the 80s. He was 5'3", 115 pounds. In the 1980 Olympics, he got 5th and then fixed everything he could. In the 1984 Olympics, got a gold medal. He was always told that he was too little, that he wasn't good enough. Became a gold medalist. So he credits his success to being mentally prepared. That's what he credits to. So it goes on to talk about a golfer named Lee Trevino. I don't even know who that is, but I'm guessing he's good at golf. What is pressure? Pressure is when you've got $35 riding on a 4-foot putt and you've only got $5 in your pocket. Former Pittsburgh Steelers coach Chuck Noll defined pressure as something you feel only when you don't know what you're doing. The human body reacts to pressure and stress. The heart beats faster and breathing quickens. No one is immune. Jack Nicklaus, who has won more major championships than any golfer in history, says, pressure creates tension, and when you're tense, you want to get your task over and done with as fast as possible. The more you hurry in golf, the worse you will probably play, which leads to even heavier pressure and greater tension. That's swimming, right? When you're tense, you cannot swim fast because you're tense over the water and under the water, you're using double your energy. So when you create tension from pressure, it creates more tension and more pressure, which then makes you not swim well. So it's finding pressure that motivates you rather than scares you. We have a natural tendency to invest more energy when we are under pressure, but when tension rises, 2 things happen. The feet can't move and the diaphragm collapses. It's automatic, it's in the genetic code. So it's saying your body has very natural responses to pressure, just like we talked about. The body has responses to thoughts. Like when you have a nightmare, your heart rate increases, even though it's in your brain. Same thing with pressure. Pressure gets a bad name, but it can bring out the best in you. In fact, if you don't feel any pressure, you're probably not going to do your best, right? So it's finding that sweet spot. So back to Hamilton. Hamilton said that he approached his gold medal performance with refined indifference. The hard work was over. Now he told himself, go out and enjoy. So if you've watched the Ryan Murphy YouTube video I sent out, I'm going to reference that here. If you haven't, go watch it now. But they tie in together. So Ryan Murphy talks about how he is the most nervous about a race 2 months out because there's still variables he can control at that point. So maybe he should be eating differently. Maybe he should be holding faster pace times. Maybe he should be doing more pace, maybe less, practicing more. Like there's all these variables still. The day of the race, that's it. You've done what you can do. You can't train anymore. You can't eat any better. You can't sleep anymore. It's done. So it's all there. Whatever you're going to do is there. So that's what Hamilton's saying. He did everything he could do. So he went out there with refined indifference and won himself a gold medal. He had trained years to prepare for that moment. When the spotlight came on and the music began, he let his fate carry him through. The hard work was over. Now he told himself, go out and enjoy. Sarah Hughes chose the same approach at the 2002 Winter Games in Salt Lake City. In 4th place after the short program and feeling like she had nothing to lose, the 16-year-old took a leap of faith and skated with abandon. Sports Illustrated described her performance as uninhibited joy. While older, more experienced Olympians faltered under pressure, Sarah made history by landing 2 triple-triple combinations and won the gold. Pressure can be a positive force or a negative one. A close friend is one of the first sports psychologists to publish a study on the experiences of athletes during their greatest moments in sports. He found that more than 80% of the athletes said they felt no fear of failure. They weren't thinking about their performance, they were immersed in the activity, they were in the zone. The probability of achieving the outcome you want increases when you let go of the need to have it. So I'm interviewing Townley Haas on this week to talk to him about his mind gym, what he does when he performs really well, like winning a gold medal at the Olympics. How do you dive in the water, and what do you think about when you do that? I'm going to ask him those questions. So it would be very interesting to have you guys perform the same questions that I'm going to ask Townley about so that we can compare them. So go into your mental studio, which we discussed in the last section. Recall a time when you broke through and the pressure worked for you. So I want you to think about, go to the place where we just talked about creating in the chapter before, and you need to think about when you were in a pressure-filled situation and you did well. It doesn't have to be swimming related because you may not have found that yet in swimming. It could be something else. But a situation where there was pressure and you performed the way you wanted to. And if it's at a meet, that's great. So notice what you were doing, feeling, and saying to yourself. Were you relaxed or tense, excited or anxious? Did you fear failure or feel a desire to win? Were you focused on the outcome or absorbed in the process? So think about those and think about how that led to you being able to deal with the pressure. Everything gets interpreted. Pressure is in the brain of the beholder. Learn to view pressure as a challenge to meet rather than a threat of defeat. All right, and so the last chapter we're going to do in this talk is mental toughness. Competitive toughness is an acquired skill and not an inherited gift. So it talks about the Arizona Cardinals and that one of the coaches started calling players LTGs, short for legitimate tough guy. An LTG is a fierce competitor, a battler, an athlete who looks at pressure as a challenge, who refuses to lose and never ever quits. Who would be an LTG on our team? Someone that never quits, that always battles, that always gets it done. If you're not an LTG, how could you become one? Do you want to become one? So there's 7 characteristics of mental toughness. They are a set of behaviors and beliefs about yourself, your work, your sport, and how you interact. A person who is mentally tough looks at competition as a challenge to rise up to rather than a threat to back down from. Like physical skills, mental toughness can be learned through quality instruction and practice. So I'm going to talk about the 7 characteristics, and each of you needs to be able to answer the question, which of the characteristics are you the strongest in, and which are you the weakest in? And whichever you're the weakest in, how could you work to improve it? So the first one is competitive. A competitor will find a way to win. Competitors take bad breaks and use them to drive themselves just that much harder. Quitters take bad breaks and use them as reasons to give up. So think about your personality, how you act in swimming. Do you think being competitive is one of your strengths of mental toughness? Confident. Confident athletes have a can-do attitude, a belief that they can handle whatever comes their way. They almost never fall victim to self-defeating thoughts. Do you find yourself being negative or positive? When you go to behind the blocks, do you think, I can do however I want to do, I get to choose? So is confidence something that you would say is a strong characteristic or a weak characteristic for you? Control. Successful athletes are able to control their emotions and behavior. They focus on what they can control and don't allow things that are out of their control to affect them. The hallmark of mentally tough athletes is the ability to maintain poise, concentration, and emotional control under the greatest pressure and the most challenging situations. How many of you have been to a meet and freaked out because the person next to you was 2 years older than you? A lot of you. If you have control, then you're not worried about how old the person next to you is, because that has nothing to do with you. You're in control of yourself and your lane, and you're not worried about things that are out of your control. So how many of you would say that control is one of your strongest characteristics or weakest characteristics? And what can you do to work on it? Committed. Mentally tough athletes focus their time and energy on their goals and dreams. They are self-directed and highly motivated. How many of you are committed to what you're doing? How many of you are committed to doing drylands, to listening to these talks, to reading books, to doing your schoolwork? How many of you are committed to doing everything you can to be the best you can be? That's a real question you should ask yourself. Composure. Mentally tough athletes know how to stay focused and deal with adversity. Composure is one that doesn't feel like it's that important, but if you don't know how to stay focused, you're not going to be able to do what you need to do. Courage. A mentally tough athlete must be willing to take a risk. How many of you take risks in practice? Or do you wait until the last one to try? How many of you take risks in these drylands we're posting and do them as hard as you can every day? How many of you have taken risks in a meet to get out fast and see what you can do? Consistency. Mentally tough athletes possess an inner strength. They often play their best when they're feeling their worst. They don't make excuses. Do you make excuses for why you're not doing dryland right now? For why you're not doing school right now? When we're practicing, for why you're not making some practices? To what happened in a race? Competition is won or lost on the 6-inch playing field between the ears. Practice the 7 C's of mental toughness. Learn to love the competition. Okay, so those 7, quick recap. Competitive, confident, control, committed, composure, courage, consistency. So think about what you need to work on. Think about ways to work on it. Create your mind gym. And what was your last homework? Figure out how to be mentally and physically prepared. So the next talk is going to be on knowing your numbers. All right. I will talk to you guys on Zoom or in chat number 5. Have a great day.